Girl, you've got questions. Questions about your body and how to feel good in it, about your hormones and how to keep them in check. Questions about your sex life and your whole health. Can you imagine having a best girlfriend who was also a triple board certified OBGYN? A girlfriend doctor you could call and ask or tell her anything. Someone who could show you how to live any stage of life, before, during, or after menopause, in a big, bold, and beautiful way. Well, friends, I'm your girlfriend doctor. I believe you are meant to flourish and shine, to embrace life and awaken to all its possibilities. Let's get there together. Welcome to our show. Every bite that you take is either fueling inflammation or preventing it. And seriously, do you believe that mental health, the answer to mental health, to mood and energy, is at the tip of your fork? Well, today on the Girlfriend Doctor Show, I am thrilled to be joined by someone who feels like both a colleague and a friend. Allie Miller, who's a registered dietitian, is a powerhouse in the world of functional medicine and nutrition. And she's been a pioneer on the forefront of educating others and educating clinicians as well as consumers in what is right to use for food as medicine, especially in the area of mental health. She is an educator, a mama, a wife, and a passionate advocate for food as medicine. Her best-selling books are The Anti-Anxiety Diet and The Anti-Anxiety Diet Cookbook. She has an award-winning podcast called Naturally Nourished, and her incredible work has been helping women and families use food to heal, restore balance, and thrive. Allie truthfully has a gift of making nutrition simple, approachable, and joyful and delicious. And because we've shared so many conversations together before, I know today will feel like, two girls catching it up and sharing even more, leaning into you. So listen all the way through to the end. This is an episode where you will want to share, take notes, and start implementing your next right step right away. You're going to love this conversation. So join me in welcoming Allie Miller back to the Girlfriend Doctor podcast. Well, hello, Allie. It is so good to see you again.
So good to see you, Dr. Cabeca. We were just catching off online, and I feel like there's been so many things. I mean, I think last we talked, you were a new grandma. So
Yeah, she's now 3 years old. So
goodness,
there's been a
goodness.
lot going on, a lot going on.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's just to see the children of today just growing and well also navigating my daughter, as a single mom, navigating healthy choices
Yes.
for her and trying to budget all these things. Now, you've been in the nutrition space. Like, we have lectured together, we've shared stages, we've, had so many interactions over the last decade. How are things different today? I'm going to say post-pandemic than they were pre-pandemic, because definitely for me in the clinic, like, I've had to learn a lot more about autoimmunity and so many other things, but really pushing anti-inflammatory and food as medicine. But it's a different, really navigating a lot of challenges now.
Yes. And I think, one of the biggest things I'm seeing, of course, ties to more screen time, less time in nature, and less time in community in general, which is a sad sore, I think, left resolving from that isolation and separation during the bed season. And I think, especially when we're talking about our children, not only does it extend to ultra processed food marketing at them, but we're also seeing as parents, as mothers, as individuals, a lot of rapid fire nutrition confusion and fear mongering and a lot of shock and awe without solution. And so this keeps us in just this fight or flight, anxious surge of feeling overwhelmed and honestly feeling at sometimes like you just don't know. It's almost an analysis paralysis. Like, you don't know what is safe to eat, or you just want to throw it all out the door because you're hearing kale's going to kill you, or you're hearing, that you have to go carnivore, or that keto is good or bad, or that you need to have carbs or XYZ. And I think I really tend to, and as I think we think very like-minded in this sense, go back to simplicity of the concept of, if you're going to use food as medicine, we have to first start with the idea of what is a whole real food. I've been defining this as God food often, because I think it's just an easy way to take a step back and think about, am I consuming a product of the industry, the industrialized system that was made in a factory, or am I consuming something that had a mother, father? And we have to say that now because there's now Petri lab dish grown proteins that are coming available in some states. So really taking a step back, I think, before we get so nuanced in even micronutrients or oxalates or these, kind
Yeah,
of.
avoid the lectins.
Yes, yes. And I think first pivoting and saying, let's start with whole real foods first. That's the first priority.
Now, one of the things that you really delved into in your first book, The Anti-Anxiety Diet, was about using food as medicine to heal our neurotransmitters, right? And so when you looked at that, you found really key foods that are like, super powerful for mind, memory, mood. And can you touch on those a little bit? Like, talk about some plates too. Like, give us some good recipes or good plates.
So, first in general, in the world of macronutrients, we have to speak to the power of protein because protein breaks down to amino acids, and these play a role in formation of our neurotransmitters. And so we've heard of course, tryptophan with serotonin, tyrosine helps to make dopamine. And so these amino acid precursors combine with B vitamins as cofactors to actually make these active neuro compounds. And these can play a role on cravings, mood, as well as driving, of course, depression, anxiety, or mental illness if either too heightened or too suppressed. So everything works in a beautiful symphony where we want the conductor, our HPA axis, or our regulation of our autonomic nervous system, to be able to fine tune our neurotransmitters for optimal cognition as well as mental health and balance. And so when we are looking at food as medicine, getting ample protein is first key as a minimal foundation. I love looking at egg yolks as a really powerful brain food and mood supporter because of the choline in there. So a whole egg, but eat the yolk as well. And I'm talking about getting like 4 eggs for breakfast, not 1 or 2. This is really key because choline aids with production of acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is like a conductor to the signaling within our neurochemistry. And so this can really help both with testing scores, memory, alertness, but also in mood stability and even offsetting that fight or flight stress surge of overreactivity. A big area of imbalance in the neurotransmitter world actually comes from a root cause of dysbiosis. So we watch heavily getting a abundance of phytocompounds and tannins from our antioxidant rich produce to fuel a diverse microbiome, and also even in some sense start to defend against overgrowth. And then we really watch those refined carbohydrates and sugars, which can fuel that imbalance. And if we're dealing with a gut infection, we're going to put out more epinephrine or adrenaline, that fight or flight surge. And I'll often see individuals with gut infections dealing with panic attacks because of that reason alone.
Well, there's been a lot on protein, right? Protein is key to muscle. Muscle is magic, certainly in menopause and all these things, mood, memory, rebuilding our bones, et cetera, et cetera. Now, how much protein do women really need to have? And then, of course, how much do kids need to have?
Yes. Yeah. So in Naturally Nourished Kids, we actually double the recommendations of the AAP, which might not come as a surprise to some of your listeners of,
So
how.
American Academy of Pediatrics, and your book you're talking about newly released is Naturally Nourished Kids.
Yes, yes.
So,
So in Naturally Nourished Kids, we go through all of the macros in the guide introduction materials, 40 pages of deep dive information of how to confidently nourish your child from baby-led weaning into keeping healthy hip in the teenage years. And so within that section, we have a part called Mastering Your Macros. And for kids, yes, in the AAP guidelines, we are about half of the carb recommendations, double the protein. So basically kind of flipping that food pyramid model, if you will, in some sense. And then we are pretty equilateral on the fat recommendations, but we're really focused on quality coming from whole food sources, where many kids are unfortunately getting a lot of industrialized seed oils as their primary form of fat. But in the protein guidelines, we really push for at all ages about that gram per pound of body weight.
Of
Uh,
ideal body weight?
yes, ideal body weight. So adjusted if over 35 pounds over where the ideal is, then we would do an adjusted. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really powerful to know because you get a lot of confusion and, protein, too much protein is going to, feed the glucose pathways and inhibit mTOR. So like navigating that, is there a good way to figure out, okay, this is the right amount for me?
Yeah, so I have a really nerdy, I think I wrote it back in 2017 or 2018 blog on mTOR and protein specifically, because that was a big backlash, especially when carnivore was kind of coming online in the keto space. There was a lot of concerns about this protein threshold. And we look at particular amino acids to be more of a stimulus to mTOR. And when we're talking about mTOR, just to set the foundation, this can create risk factor for tumorigenic activity. It's an anabolic marker. And so when we're watching factors like cancer, we want to keep that suppressed, of course, or in a regular, not accelerated, elevated level. We do see when we look at even like glutamine, which is one of the higher amino acids that stimulates mTOR, I think I calculated that you would have to have, it was like a chicken breast, a burger patty, 8 ounces of bone broth, and 6 grams of L-glutamine, which would be like in a gut support formula doubled down to even have an influencing impact. So I don't really see a lot of validity in that. We actually see refined processed carbohydrates because of the insulin impact rising mTOR more dramatically. So I'm not worried in whole real food settings. Now, if someone is maybe tripling that threshold, they weigh 120 pounds and they're eating 360 grams of protein, that's very possible, but not within these very reasonable, metabolically healthy whole food protein recommendations.
The issue is just not getting enough.
Yes, yes, most
Not getting
definitely.
enough.
Yes.
Yeah, and really paying attention to that. And, I think like when we look at this and we think about, okay, what's our plate supposed to look like? Like, the healthy plate. I do want to go back to the egg yolk thing because like egg white omelets just kill me. I mean, like, why are you doing that to yourself? So, like the whole egg, but, I'm dairy sensitive. So this is my pet peeve, Allie. I'm like, I go to a restaurant and say, does that coleslaw have dairy in it? Oh, yes, it has mayonnaise. I'm like, wait, eggs are not dairy. Does it have any milk poured
Yogurt?
in there or cream or yogurt? Right. And, like that's the whole thing that talking about the food pyramid, you mentioned, okay, flipping the American Academy of Pediatrics food pyramid and the food pyramid we grew up with. I mean, I grew up with, but in the 60s and 70s and 80s, I mean, eggs were part of the dairy. Like you would see
Yes,
eggs on that dairy
with the
line.
milk carton.
But can you just clarify eggs are not dairy? They are protein.
Correct. They are not dairy. They do not come from a cow or a goat or any ruminant.
Yeah, it's like definitely a pet peeve of mine. So, like everything, like for our audience, like when you've been fed this stuff by the FDA or the food guidelines or ADA, et cetera, American Diabetic Association, just you've got to think, right? And this is why we're here. And Allie's been a true advocate for helping you think about your food and to be naturally nourished,
Yes.
as her brand is and her podcast is. I mean, this is naturally nourished. And so we are organic beings
Mhm.
and filtering so many chemicals and challenges to our immune systems now more than ever. And what we are seeing is, we are seeing, this is where you need to pay attention. This is where I think you need to pay attention. Where are pharmaceutical companies investing their money right now? They're anti-anxiety medications,
Mhm.
antidepressant medications. It's like a race to bring out and along with,
Weight loss shots?
weight loss shots, autoimmune drugs that say, okay, do not take this, or warnings, this can cause a list of 100 problems.
Yes.
But like you think of like I was just reading a business review and it said, okay, there's a huge amount of money being spent into developing these anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications. And in my sector, in the menopause sector, you go in complaining of mood swings, irritability, depression. They're not talking to you about your food. They're not talking to you about your hormones. They're quickly writing you an SSRI. I mean, because, with compassion to my fellow medical colleagues. You have 5 minutes with a patient, you want to, squell their symptoms, you want to put a band-aid on them as fast as possible, but the wound underneath is still there, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have to address the underlying issues. And when we look at this, we say, okay, I always say I practice lazy medicine because I want to make the smallest changes that are going to have the biggest effects over time. So let me affect the mitochondria. Let me
Yes.
affect the cell walls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me nourish that aspect, and woo, the cascading effect is just beautiful as a result.
Mm-hmm.
So like we think of these and we think of, okay, superfoods to include in our diet. Like you think, you've written so many amazing recipes and menus, and even to the point you're such an advocate for clean food. You had a store for a long time
Yep.
that was just like very highly sourced. So what are things that we as consumers really need to be aware of? And I do want to, follow my jumping brain today, but thinking back at my granddaughter and seeing what my daughter's getting, she's getting great organic foods, like organic applesauce, organic sweet potatoes, but they're in packaging.
Yes. Yes.
They're in packaging, and we're not, like that's another huge endocrine disruptor. And so, yeah, I want to
So
touch on
it,
all these because we're saving the next generation. Okay, well, there's a lot for us to do in this generation's and the ones ahead of us, but the ones that are following us have been inundated with at least 2 to 3 times as many chemicals as we were growing up.
yes. And it's a lot of going backward to go forward, truly, is the answer. And taking a pretty dynamic pivot. With that being said, all of my approaches with food as medicine, and even in the world of toxicity, is kind of this double-edged sword, and where we're both looking at what can we remove or reduce or completely eliminate, and then what are the dials that we want to amplify and aim for abundance. And we can even think of this in the world of, let's just break down microplastics, maybe, since you brought that up, and then we can go into something else. But even in the world of microplastics, I have been getting quite nerdy on this topic myself as well, because again, there's a lot of shock and awe. We're hearing 5 grams of plastic being consumed by average Americans per week. That's a credit card of plastic per week. And it's not just the plastic water bottles, so yes, drink out of glass, home filtration of RO. I'm on rainwater here in my house, but still my rainwater tank has a vinyl lining. It's a polymer. There's still some leaching. There's always some element to cause and provoke that anxiety or feeling out of control. And we have to always empower ourselves with what is the mechanism of action. So microplastics, as you mentioned, can disrupt our endocrine system. So they can have hormone disrupting or hormone regulating or amplifying or reduction on a hormone pathway, depending on what the compound is. We also know that microplastics, as they bioaccumulate, drive oxidative stress and inflammation. And so just kind of thinking of always pivot, stop, what is the mechanism of action, and where is my source of exposure? So we can start at home, whether we're shifting to like the caraway bamboo utensils or even the cheaper Target wooden utensils, right? They don't have to be glam leveling up, but there's all the continuum. Switching to stainless steel, cast iron cookware, the wooden cutting board from the plastic. And so within our household, the dish pods, the yoga clothing of actually aiming for more organic cotton and hemp and linen, which is actually high frequency fabric that works with our electromagnetic field of the body favorably. So pretty cool to like dress ourselves in clothing that works for us versus suppresses and leaches and creates that toxicity. So there's always swap outs in all of those areas. And then what we can put in on the offense side, actually, there's so much literature already about probiotics and microplastics, and very favorable in the idea of remediation. And we actually see that in nature. Like when there's oil spills, we look to mushrooms, we look to organic ability to decay and break down these volatile compounds, and probiotics have the ability to support doing that in the human body. So eating probiotic rich foods, consuming a quality probiotic supplement would be a prudent strategy for a multitude of factors, but that's just one more peace of mind that you're offsetting your body's exposure to microplastics. And then I think of in the world of antioxidants to offset oxidative stress. And of course, we're both big fans of supporting our detox pathways. So, we look to phytocompound rich foods, rooibos tea, getting those curcuminoids with our turmeric. I'm a big fan of super greens cubes. Of course, you have your super greens powder blends. So I'll add broccoli sprout into smoothie. I'll add kale. I'll add beet greens. All of that chlorophyll has a huge ability to help to chelate and safely detoxify without throwing off the mineral balance of the body. I could even go on, but that's just, like one little subset of, so then we look to, of our exposure foods, which ones can we get closest to the source? And that kind of connects that idea of the market is we were getting full broken down whole hogs because I really believe in that idea of snout to tail or eating the whole animal. There is a balance that nature provides. And ancestrally, we always did so. We would consume the organs. We would make broths out of the bones. And that's where you're getting that gelatin and collagen for gut support. We're getting glycine in bone broth, which even we've seen glycine-rich foods can offset glyphosate exposure. So going backwards, actually in a food as medicine model can very strategically support us in what's happening in this industrialized world. And I think there's a lot of hope within that. I always like to lead with hope and positivity because as the author of the anti-anxiety diet, I know that negative thoughts can harm the human body. So I want to always make sure when I'm sharing, I'm equally empowering you and you're feeling like at the end, not high-powered hose overwhelmed, but a sense of, I can do this. This makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's important to address that. I had a client the other day from Portugal, and I was like, okay, that's got to be really good fish. And she eats mostly, let's say, keto-green, or she's been following keto for a while, but doing it in a healthy way. So I always call it the keto-green way. And I asked her, okay, she had severe, severe debilitating PMS and like losing a week of every month to this PMS and anxiety and dysmenorrhea, painful periods. And I said, okay, so she's been in Portugal for 5 years, going through the history. I always ask, the vaccination history and COVID history. And I said, okay, well, she goes, yeah, we live out in the country. We're far from the city. So as far as industrial pollutions, there's no mold in our house. You want to start triggering these. She goes, oh, but they spray regularly, almost daily, for mosquitoes here. And I was like, okay, what are they using to spray? And I said, whatever it is, it's not healthy, but that can be a huge human hormone disruptor. And it's like, without the spraying, we can't go outside. And I was like, oh, that's another, we got to work on this environment altogether, because where's the natural predators for our mosquitoes now? But what is to support, and like thinking of anxiety, I mean, PMS is a high anxiety state for most women, or depression, but it can be a combination of both. So what are specific foods? We're thinking of this, okay, we're going to eliminate the amount of toxins that we can expose ourselves to, but there's the ones we're not able to eliminate just yet. Supporting ourselves with food in this way. Like I was curious. I'm like, I don't know what to give you for an antidote for mosquito spray at this point.
Sure.
At least it's not DDT like it was in the past.
But
who knows what it
or
is?
some other big endocrine disrupting, probably pesticide of sorts. So yes, I can't speak to the particular compound. Of course, we're going to want to open up the detox pathways and support both phase 1 and phase 2 detox. But as far as offsetting that anxiety level, I mean, my biggest power player tool is biological or bioidentical GABA. I'm a big fan of GABA. I think that it is the inhibitory neurotransmitter, and it really does release the steam train valve that build up of that physiological surge of the fight or flight response, which can be defined as anxiety. And even we can see benefits of GABA with blood pressure reduction. We can see that GABA can be used to help with even like tremor. I use it a lot in the Parkinson's population. I use it a lot in individuals that deal with like social anxiety, individuals going through a gnarly divorce. Anytime we're starting to feel that physiological freight train going off in the body. And unfortunately, as I say that, a lot of us have had that going on so long. It's that frog in that simmering pot of water where we adapt and regulate and don't see the biofeedback, or maybe witness or honor the signals that canary in the coal mine. So it might start like acne, it might follow with the PMS, and then down the line, we might see more severe markers of that fight or flight chronic stress signaling response. So I always like to help my clients inventory and kind of take witness in honoring their experience in their body. And I like to work a lot with breath. Breath is one of the most powerful free tools that we have access to, and one of the most dynamic ways that we can see getting back into that parasympathetic space when we are in that sympathetic fight or flight surge. And so working with a 4-7-8 breath, or even box breathing, or even just emphasizing that exhale and release, can get the body back into a safety space. I do a lot of vagus nerve work and different physical movements that, just like a baby, when we swaddle the baby, little jostling, actually rocking on the bottoms of our feet, like our heels, and getting that vibration of like a loose, bouncy head can help to toggle that vagus nerve back into a parasympathetic space, which can feel almost like clockwork, a safety signal to the body. There's umbilical or belly button stimulation type massage that can actually work direct into that vagus nerve. And a lot of us hold that stress in that enteric nervous system, and then are dealing with IBS related symptoms, whether chronic constipation or loose stool or even stubborn bloating. Sometimes doing some belly button vagal nerve exercises can really release that locking that we were doing in that area. So I like to blend all of it, truly. So, supplement. I like to blend in breath work. I like to blend in some body work, some somatic work, and then even some mental emotional work, whether we're turning to scripture or prayer, whether we are rewriting the script of nocebo effect of negative thought patterns that we need to rewrite even into neutrality.
Yeah.
All of these can be in the medicine, in that treatment modality. And then the basis of the food are really looking at, again, grounding, warming proteins, bone broth, probiotic rich foods really play key in getting people off the blood sugar roller coaster. I mean, unfortunately, when mental health is off, we tend to be seeking more of that dopamine escape mechanism, and fat paired with carbohydrates drives the most dynamic dopamine signal, yet over time depletes the dopamine level. So we're not getting that tyrosine, that amino acid to make the dopamine. And so rewriting that script from the refined sugars and the sweets to the savory can be a really good entry point of starting to help your body to get more grounded and help that anxiety to reduce.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we think about these, specific foods that have nutrients to support our neurotransmitters. We talk about, what are some of your favorite tryptophan containing foods, and what are your favorite tyrosine containing foods?
Yes. So I love dark poultry, so like chicken thighs, again getting back to that like whole animal versus just the breasts, boneless, skinless. So when we are getting the thighs, the darker meat is richer in tyrosine than we see in the breast. And then also when we're getting bone in, skin on, like I would recommend, where you start searing bone down, then flip to skin and pop it in the oven. Tasty, delicious. We're going to get more glycine. And so glycine also helps with GABA formation. So in the food as medicine world, we're going to make GABA via fermentation in the gut. So we need those probiotics again, but we also need glycine rich foods, which is in bone, skin. So doing like slow cooked meats, like right now I actually have a summer stew going in our slow cooker. So tougher meat cuts, which are also kind of have left the American diet where we're all doing grinds only or steak. We need these glycine rich collagenous tissue options because those are very calming to
Okay,
the
wait, what
body.
kind of cut is that? Because, like,
So,
yeah,
so like short ribs or like
short
stew
ribs.
meat.
So you're
Uh-huh.
cooking them with the bones.
Yep. That when you cook with the bone, or like carnitas, like doing a pork shoulder, or I'll often do also a beef shoulder. And, you can take that into barbacoa. We're in Texas, so I love Tex-Mex, but, so I like to mix that with like cilantro and some jalapeno with a chicken
Okay, what's
stock.
barbacoa?
Barbacoa is shredded beef. like a flavored
Oh,
shredded
okay.
beef for like a shredded beef taco, which you could do in a salad or in a lettuce cup or in a siete tortilla type of thing. But yeah, so barbacoa, you could use beef shoulder, and then you'd pan sear it in the cast iron, take your big heavy beef shoulder into your slow cooker, and then, add some cooking liquids. Usually that's going to be bone broth in my world. It might be a homemade marinara from my garden. It might be something else that I've made in bulk and have in freezer cubes, but that kind of goes in there with some seasonings, which always amplify the antioxidants. So great there to reduce the oxidative stress and inflammation. But dark poultry is the best for actually both tyrosine and tryptophan. And then I love grass-fed whey. Sorry on the no dairy on your part, but for most women that aren't dairy sensitive, it is just one of the most biologically available proteins. So if we're struggling to meet our protein needs, it can be a really good option, and very rich in leucine as well, which is that threshold we look at for lean body mass and muscle.
Yeah, yeah, darn that way. Okay.
And duck eggs are actually really high in tyrosine too, surprisingly, more than a chicken egg. So if you can get those at your farmer's market, that's a win.
How about oysters?
Oysters are fantastic. In the world, they're lower in amino acid because, they're actually more mineral rich. We get a lot of CoQ10, zinc, bite for bite. Oysters are nature's multivitamin essentially. And I think the most delicious organ to consume. When we're
I
talking
agree.
about
I love
comparing about like a
oysters.
gamey, beef liver. I'm pretty good at eating chicken liver and chicken hearts. I'm a big fan of the ancestral blends of meats, which you can get. Like Force of Nature is a brand that nationally does partnership with regenerative farmers, and they do ancestral blends of bison, beef, and chicken. So we use that in our superfood chicken nuggets in Naturally Nourished Kids. And that's a great way to amplify B vitamins, minerals, like I said, CoQ10. So you're fueling the mitochondria while you're getting the protein goals met as well.
Okay, and I gotta ask a personal question. Okay, so you've got a toddler, right? She's a
I have a
toddler
9-year
now?
old. She's 9. Yes.
9? Oh my
I know,
god,
right? Time
time
and
goes
space.
by so quickly. Yeah, my youngest is 17. She's a senior in high school.
Crazy.
So I think of this, okay, so you're running around, you've got a busy life, you have your family, you have your business, you have your podcast, you're writing books. So how do you personally use food and rituals in your own life to manage stress and keep you grounded and on mission?
Yes. So if I do not meet my protein goals, I notice that is one of the real time effects of feeling squirrely. And by that, I mean kind of uncontained, all over the place. Like my mind is racing. I can be a little bit more reactive potentially at my daughter or husband. So I really ensure that I use food as an anchor of consistency in my daily life. I have a homemade protein shake every day with whole real foods. Like I said, that super greens cube, usually full fat coconut milk, ginger, and then like quarter cup of mango and a grass-fed whey scoop with immunoglobulins. I eat 4 eggs every single day, like a ritual, whether that's hard boiled or over easy or in a scramble. We have chickens on my property, and so we're constantly kind of working. It's almost like a challenge to keep up with them to eat enough of their eggs. And then I'm a big proponent of during the day, it's like cottage cheese smoothie, tuna salad. And honestly, I talk about this in the book because the reality is during the day, I am, as you know, and you are as well, I'm sure, a high stress individual that often works through her lunch. Unfortunately, I would love to say that I take a parasympathetic break and I look over my valley and I sit and I eat my salmon salad and I breathe. That doesn't happen. It's putting out fires during my lunch. It's
Yeah.
keeping up with the 27 emails that came in just during my 4 patients before lunch. And so I work through my lunches, unfortunately, and that means that I'm doing that green smoothie or cottage cheese or something that's easy to assimilate, easy to digest, is absolutely providing me 30 to 35 grams of protein in a dense way so that I can maintain that grounding and I don't have to stop and slow down. And again, that's not optimal, but that's my real life answer. Now, for evening meal, I'm very staunch about the idea that the family is formed around the table. All of the most important conversations, all of the deep connections, the downloads from the day, the processing, the problem solving happens at the hearth, at the table. And so I'm a very big proponent of making sure that at minimum 6 of the 7 nights a week, we sit down collectively as a family and we eat. And I do have only one child, so we're able to work around Stella. If she has dance till 7 tonight, we have summer stew going in the slow cooker. So when we arrive home, that's going to be completed. It's literally scoop it, top it with basil, eat your dinner together, and decompress. So my evening meal is always very parasympathetic. We're seated, we're chewing, it's denser protein, always the highest in veg as well, because I have better digestive enzyme production when I'm not in that fight or flight surge. We actually only make a quarter of the amount of our digestive enzymes when we're in active fight or flight duty. I find that my digestion prefers that. Now, metabolically, for some people, if they aren't working like a Looney Tune, eat your larger meal in the morning and noon and smallest meal in the evening. But for Allie Miller today at age 40, this is what works for me in my current era. That's how
Yeah,
I'm doing it.
no, that works. That's really good. And to think about that, it's a challenge to my daughter at the ranch 3 hours every night. Like sometimes dinners are really late, so
Yes.
I'll eat early and sit with her during hers. But it's a really like the challenge, but do it to the best of your ability. And I would say there was a study that was published that looked at saying grace at a meal reduces your
Yes.
cortisol and increases your digestion.
Ugh.
And so just these little practices are really powerful, and they make a huge difference. So why did you write naturally nourished kids? And I'm like you guys, like the holidays around the corner, you're going to want to get a copy to give to your
Yeah.
friends and with kids, etc., because like this is important food as medicine in a really easily digestible way.
Yes. So, I mean, I wrote it because of Stella, and actually Becky co-wrote this book with me. And so she has a baby that is now 7.5 weeks old as we're speaking, Otto, and Mabel is turning 3 this month and Noah is turning 5 this month. So we have the whole spread with Stella at 9. And so, actually when Becky was pregnant with Noah and the anti-anxiety diet cookbook had just released, this was like early 2019, we started talking about, okay, the next project, I said, because Becky photographed the anti-anxiety diet cookbook and Naturally Nourished for me. And she's the co-host of my podcast. We've been in business for quite some time and are dear friends. And I told her on a walk, I'll always remember it. I said, okay, my next book, actually, you're going to co-write with me. You're going to photograph it and we're going to do it as Real Food Mamas. And we're going to speak about the importance of real food in our household and how to make it fun for kids and how to empower kids for mental and metabolic health. And, mind you, this was before even we saw higher trajectory of childhood obesity, neurological conditions. Now we're seeing 1 in 5 children with ADHD or a mental illness. We're seeing 20% of children on one pharmaceutical drug. And so there's just a really high need. And we're seeing that if we can harness kids' blood sugar, I think that is the first crux that unfortunately, right when we start those kiddos with their rice cereal and their refined, ultra processed oatmeal, both of them which are synthetically enriched. So if it's an MTHFR kid, we're already priming them for neurological imbalance. Right off the top of the bat, or their first food is an ultra processed, refined, synthetically enriched carb. So with baby-led weaning, we really start with, again, whole, real, savory foods. So Stella's first food was avocado. Her second food was wild salmon. Her third food was smashed blueberries. And then that followed suit with a bunch of other whole real foods. And so we teach you how to do that and the importance of the why, because even if you're listening and you have teens or you have a grown child that is pregnant or looking for optimal fertility, these tenets and these concepts apply to all ages, and we all have to pivot and sometimes rewrite and redirect. And so we really try to have enough information to talk about guided conversations with your children at all age ranges so that they also feel empowered by these changes and not victimized, not, oh, mom's doing this crazy thing. We've all seen, especially, in this era, the Weight Watchers moms and that impact on kids. This is not a diet mentality. It is actually in somewhat a lower carb approach for kids. And some might call that a diet, but we're rewiring their capacity for neurological health. And so there's no time like now to ensure that we as parents feel confident in how to do so, meaning we know how to build a balanced plate. We know what is the biggest areas to avoid or to limit or to fully restrict or get out of our pantry. And we know what are the levers of abundance so we can start to try these 100+ delicious recipes and get some big home run wins with our household members that become things that we regularly sit down on and enjoy and nourish together.
Yeah, and I want to say that too, like we've been in the keto world a long time, right? Like we've had a lot of interaction with other influencers in the keto space too. And you and I are very similar. I mean, high quality protein, high quality fat, fermented food, lots of good alkalinizing greens and, cruciferous vegetables and all that good stuff. So how, how do you address the carnivore group?
So I think that my kind of two basic tenets of optimal eating and food as medicine is that we were designed to be a hybrid machine, meaning maybe I don't like that word machine. Maybe I need to rewrite that, but a
Yeah.
hybrid being meaning that we use both glucose and ketones. I think we were designed to be able to have access to ketones on a regular basis. Does that mean that we have to be in deep nutritional ketosis all the time? No, but I think we need to have access to ketones at all times and our body to be metabolically flexible to get there and to keep our insulin levels in range, that our metabolism isn't locked and we're not in a lipogenic or fat storage promotion mode. I also believe that we were designed to be omnivores. I talk about my wrong stepping of veganism in the anti-anxiety diet, and I do believe that my vegan diet in the choices that I was making of a lot of concentrated of vital wheat gluten, tofu, soy isolates, et cetera. This is in early 2000s, that created a lot of gut disruption for me, of course. Those are very abrasive, inflammatory foods. Of course, the soy is goitrogenic. So I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and anemia after doing a tight, perfect vegan diet and a 2-month run of raw vegan, which I think really was the crux on my body. And I say that because when I hear things against plants, talking about the lectins, the oxalates, the anti-nutrients, in a damaged gut, I was the perfect example of how those foods could damage and harm, because I was coming in as an anxious high wire. I was at Bastyr, so I was at Naturopathic College of Medicine. I wanted all straight A's. I wanted to absolutely memorize, not just get good grades, but master the material. And so I was taking any elective I could get my hands on, medicinal mushroom foraging, you name it. And so high stress, high strung, and eating a lot. And I'm talking 10 cups of kale, types of things. And so I think that I've experienced that. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, when we talk about the healing properties of some of the carnivore diet, absolutely. The bone broth, those, if we're getting variety of meat cut, as I spoke to earlier, the healing power of protein. But if we don't get also some phyto compound, we have to swing that pendulum and stay in a balanced state of that omnivore status, because the phyto compounds, actually oxalates, not only can trap minerals, but guess what? They can also trap toxins. They're a binder. So if you are eating clean carnivore and you're missing all plant matter, you are not detoxifying optimally. You also are not going to be producing as much antioxidant, because whether we call sulforaphane a hormetic stressor and we say, oh, well, it's a toxin and that's why the broccoli makes glutathione in our body. I don't care if something as a stimulus is driving endogenous production of glutathione, the master antioxidant. I see that as a life-saving beneficial compound. Now, am I going to eat 17 cups of broccoli till I'm burping and farting and bloated 5 inches out? No, that would be at a limit that is not going to be appropriate biologically speaking. So I think there's a sweet spot. And I think that when I've done micronutrient analysis on individuals that have been tight carnivore, we've definitely seen some holes. And I've definitely remediated them by strategically strategically bringing in phyto compounds. Sometimes we can move in the world of like chimichurri dips. So like, let
Hmm.
me get you to open your world to garlic, olive oil, oregano. I can do a
All
lot.
the herbs and
Yes, I
spices. Oh
can
my
do a lot
gosh.
of
Yes.
damage that way. And if you say that
Yes.
your gut feels best that way, cool. Let's drink rooibos tea and hibiscus tea. Let's get this blend of herbs and seasonings and spices in a fat fueled dip. And that might work for us because again, that's not this staunch falling off the cliff. You're still swinging on that pendulum. So I just think, there's times to pulse in, sometimes a super high phyto compound to support more detox, sometimes a little bit more lower on the produce, higher on the protein for gut rehab. But either way, we need to be able to swing. We need to have some movement in the tank with
And
our
fermented food and
yeah.
digestive aids. Digestion's a real big issue. What are
Yeah.
some of your favorite digestive foods or supplements?
So I am a big proponent food wise of fermented vegetables, like you said. So krauts, I love kimchi. We have a really lovely kimchi aioli that we do in the book with these crispy acorn squash wedges that we dredge.
Mm.
Yeah, beautiful. And so those are like crisped up in the oven and then a kimchi aioli. And I've been using that condiment on everything. So it's literally like a quality mayo blended with kimchi and it's awesome. A little bit more pizzazz in our recipe, but that's the basis of it. So topping with fermented veggies. Like I said, I'm a big proponent of cottage cheese as a great way to get both probiotics and protein as a staple, or a full fat quality Greek yogurt or kefir, but Greek yogurt or cottage cheese would have that protein double down. I'm a big fan of actually kombucha as well, like a low sugar kombucha. I like Dr. Brew most recently. So those are all really good options to support the microbiome in the sense of digestion. I like doing a lemon turmeric shooter in the morning. And that helps to drive bile flow, the biliary system of the liver gallbladder, so that we're getting emulsification and excretion of toxins, but also revving up our digestive juices. And that's literally like 5 lemons with 4 inches of turmeric and 4 inches of ginger. You blend it on high, and I just keep it in a big jar like this. And I just pour
Mm.
myself 2 ounces every day and shoot it. If you want, you can add black pepper to get a little more curcuminoid, but depends on if you like that.
I'm gonna make that.
Okay,
That
I'll
sounds
send you
great.
it.
Yeah, because I think like every quarter do some type of gallbladder flush, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
keep
So
supporting at least on a quarterly
no
basis, if
doubt.
not daily.
Yep. So that's a
Yeah.
really great one. And it's really lovely. I prefer it over like apple cider vinegar. Uh, Palette wise and also impact from what I've experienced from trying both. But ACV also is a really great way to drive that hydrochloric acid rev that we need to break down dense proteins and to activate our digestive enzymes. And so on a supplement world, I would say most definitely a quality digestive enzyme that has HCl, that has bile in it, ideally. I like enzymes that have DPP4, which can also help to break down the casein in dairy and the gluten, reducing that gluteomorphin impact. And then, so a digestive enzyme, a probiotic, and then also I do like some gut lining supports I mentioned before, like an L-glutamine paired with like aloe and DGL. So we get some of that anti-inflammatory mucilaginous coating. And those are kind of the foundations of where I go in the world of gut.
And do you talk about that supplements in your book?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's one supplement you would never leave home without or never travel without?
Oh, okay. I have to say two. Um, so I would say Calm and Clear is my number one. That's like my desert island. It's a blend of amino acids, B vitamins. And so there's phosphatidylserine, which aids in cortisol management. There is L-theanine in there as an amino acid, which helps with alpha brainwave activity. So concentration and focus without agitation and anxiety. There's also some nervine herbs in there and some adaptogens. So you get a good shield of resilience and chill. And then some, like I said, B vitamins to help with both energy metabolism, but also as cofactors to those neurotransmitters. So that's my like, keeps me parasympathetic, regulated as a hustler. And then I would say cellular antiox is the other one, which is glutathione, NAC, a little bit of B6, and broccoli sprout. I feel like having that combo of just cellular protection in today's industrialized world is pretty important.
I think, phytonutrients, polyphenol, like these haven't, definitely we've to address and really make a disciplined effort to increase that into our diet.
Yes.
And not to demonize it in any way, but just to really increase it, like the colors of the rainbows, going back to that um, principle, colors of a rainbow in our on our plate. I think that's so key.
Yes.
So, Allie, how does everyone get in touch with you, listen to your show, get a copy of your book?
Yes, so you can find me on social media at Ali Miller RD. So it's just ALIMILLER RD. And then the website is alimillerrd.com. You can get all 4 of my books there. We have protocols, my supplement line, and then the Naturally Nourished podcast and Naturally Nourished YouTube channel are where you can get either long format interviews. I think we've had Dr. Cabeca on 3 times, if not 4. And then the YouTube is more 12-minute bite size. Like we have the lemon turmeric shooter on there, for instance, if you're just kind of looking to get a bite of food as medicine.
I love it. Allie, thank you so much, as always, for your wisdom, your humor, and your heart. I love that every time we connect, you give new insights, new inspiration, but practical tools to help into our own kitchen and our families and our life, and the importance of it. You've been doing this, we've been in this a long time. We've ridden some waves together and challenges. We have to be careful what we say sometimes. Yes, food is medicine, and it's probably the best medicine. So for all my listeners, please check out Allie's work at alimillerrd.com and check out her book, Naturally Nourished Kids and the Anti-Anxiety Diet. I mean, this is really creating those medicinal menus for you. Know how big I am on that. And please make sure you subscribe to the Girlfriend Doctor Show and share this episode with your friends that could use some encouragement. And let me know what you're putting on your plate this week that feels like food as medicine. Definitely tag me at the Girlfriend Doctor. Well, until next time, everyone, thank you. Remember, you are not alone, and I love being your Girlfriend Doctor. So till next time.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Girlfriend Doctor podcast. Check out all the links below for more.